Thank you for joining us today. My name is Charlene Mingus, and I'm the Active Transportation Planner at the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, also known as BMC. We're supporting our local member, Baltimore County, by exploring alternative trail alignments and developing 30% design documents for the Patapsco Regional Greenway, or PRG, from the Guinness to Southwest Area Park segment. An approximately 6-mile section of the PRG extending from Guinness Open Gate Brewery to Southwest Area Park with a connection to the MDOT MTA Patapsco Light Rail Station on one end and a connection to the future Elk Ridge to Guinness Greenway on the other end. In 2017, the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board approved a concept plan for the Patapsco Regional Greenway, which envisions a 40-mile shared use trail running through the Patapsco Valley from Baltimore's Inner Harbor to Sykesville in Carroll County. To date, over 12 miles of the Greenway have been completed and multiple segments are currently in the design process. So today we want to present to you the alternative trail alignments and initial design for the Guinness to Southwest Area Park segment, and then give you an opportunity to share your feedback on the project page, the survey, and various other forums. So I'd like to thank Baltimore County for their support. And on that note, the design team will now share the presentation.
Great, thank you so much, Charlene. My name is Megan Duckett. I am the project engineer working with BMC for WBCM. We are the design consultant on the project, helping BMC to develop the alternatives and move forward to preliminary design. So with that, I will get started. Our agenda for today is to talk through the project overview, give a little bit better of an idea of this segment, talk through the existing conditions of this area and what we saw out in the field. And I'll walk through the different alternatives that we pulled together. And then we'll talk about the next steps for the project, and then we'll open it up to any questions. So the project overview, as Charlene mentioned, in 2017, the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Group of the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board developed the PRG plan to identify a continuous greenway from Sykesville to the Inner Harbor through Patapsco Valley for a 40-mile continuous greenway that will be broken up into 32 different segments. So today we'll be talking about the Guinness to Southwest Area Park segment, which will connect to the previous segment from Elk Ridge to Guinness at the brewery, as Charlene mentioned. And this segment is about 5 to 6 miles long. And this will connect from the Guinness Brewery on the west side over to the Patapsco and Baltimore Highlands light rail stations and the Southwest Area Park to the east. So throughout the PRG, there are several different facility types that are going to be explored or considered to safely accommodate different user types for this greenway. And these include the asphalt or concrete pathways. You can see a photo here of a concrete pathway example. We'll also look into crushed compacted stone pathways, shared use paths, and bicycle boulevards as well. So to take a look at these facility types in a little more depth, on the bottom left here, we have an example of a shared use path, which is a typically 10 to 12 foot wide dedicated bike and pedestrian space that runs parallel to a roadway and is separated from the vehicular travelway. In the middle two pictures here are examples of an asphalt and crushed compacted stone pathway, which is typically an off-road trail alignment that's generally 10 to 12 feet wide, and again accommodates bike and pedestrians on the same facility. And then lastly, we have the bicycle boulevards on the right here, which in this facility type, you accommodate bicycles through the use of shared lane pavement markings on the roadway, which raise driver awareness to the presence of bicyclists in the roadway. And then pedestrians are accommodated through a 5 to 6 foot wide sidewalk on one or both sides of the roadway. So designing this greenway segment, so we started out by taking a look at all of the existing conditions, doing a deep dive of all the available GIS data that is available, and then going out in the field and walking the area, taking note of all the different existing conditions, environmental features, topography and different roadblocks that might come up when we're laying out the different alternatives before we kind of decide what is the best option and what makes the most sense. So we laid out different alternative options, which we'll talk through in a little bit. And then we have our public meeting, which we are here today. And then after we use all the input and feedback that we received during that comment period and through the public meeting to decide and refine the alternatives and then decide on a preferred alternative to move forward into design. So that's why your input and feedback is very important and helps us make sure we are selecting an alternative that best represents and enhances the community effectively. And once we have that preferred alternative, we will move forward with gathering survey, geotechnical, and utility mapping information before we have the next public meeting to talk through what our preferred alternative is. And then we will move forward into the 30% design. So the existing conditions that we saw out there. So before I kind of dive into the existing conditions, I just want to give a better idea of the geography between the Guinness Brewery over to Annapolis Road and some of the constraints when it came to laying out alternatives. So to the north, this land strip that's out there is bordered by 895, shown in this yellow highlight here, and to the south by the Patapsco River, shown in the blue. And between these two borders to the north and south, there were really two existing traversable paths that we could walk out in the field. And the first of which was along the north side of this land strip between 895 and Patapsco River, shown in this pink line here. And for the majority of this existing pathway, there is a BGE maintenance path that BGE uses to maintain their utilities and towers out there. And it is just a dirt path. It's very rough around the edges, and that is a trail that we could walk out there. We took a look at all of the existing conditions along this alignment. And then there was an additional path along primary DNR property, shown in green here, that ran a little bit closer along the south edge of that land strip. And again, it was just a rough existing path that was out there. It is a dirt path through the woods, and it runs along the river through DNR property mostly and on the south side of that land strip. So we were able to walk both of these pathways because we could get through the woods down there. And because both of these different paths cross in so many different areas, we considered all portions of both of these paths as potential to incorporate into our alternative layouts. So first, I want to talk about the BGE utility corridor, which was that pink path shown on the north side, some of the existing conditions on that path. So starting from Guinness Brewery, moving to the east, we came across Herbert Run, which is a pretty wide stream that's out there and perfectly cuts the land strip in half. So we will be requiring a proposed pedestrian bridge structure in order to cross this stream. And then moving further to the east, the path typically looks like this. As you move along, there is that BGE maintenance path that, as you can see, is more of a dirt, crushed stone type of path that's out there now. There are BGE towers and poles pretty much along the entire path with a lot of greenery, and it's really wide open, beautiful space out there. And then this path connects beneath 695 under the bridge over the Patapsco River. There's this opening shown here that will allow us to cross 695 beneath the bridge and cross safely. So here, this is where the maintenance path turns to the north to reconnect back up to the BGE utility corridor after 695. You can see it's a little bit more of an established dirt path out there in this area as it moves through the woods to connect up to the corridor along the west side of an unnamed tributary of the Patapsco River. And then here in between 695 and 295, it looks very much like it did before, as it's back in that corridor space with that dirt path. It's really wide open with the BGE towers and utilities and a lot of greenery in that space. Then as it reaches more towards Annapolis Road, it opens up near the National Tank and Equipment Factory. And this is where it is, there is a little heavier truck traffic going in and out of that equipment factory. And then the corridor opens up pretty wide. So this, we wanted to take a look at the existing conditions photo and then try to imagine what a shared use path, an asphalt path would look like along the BGE utility corridor. So we took this existing condition photo here and we developed a rendering to show what the proposed pathway would look like. So this shows the 10-foot wide off-road asphalt path facility. So for the BGE utility corridor, we will be proposing an asphalt path material to span the distance between Guinness and Annapolis Road. You can see it accommodates both bicyclists, pedestrians, dogs, strollers, and everything in between. So the pathway that's out there along the DNR properties along the south edge, I will refer to throughout this presentation as the Patapsco Riverside, just for consistency. I want to talk through some of the existing conditions on that path as well. So again, Herbert Run really cuts that land strip in half. So for both of these paths, we will be requiring a proposed pedestrian structure to cross Herbert Run. Then as you move through this path, it is more wooded and it runs along the river, as we mentioned, set back a little bit. This photo was taken during the winter months, so it's not as green as some of the other ones, but it's just as beautiful out there in the summer. You could see it has a little dirt path cutting through the woods. And again, it continues out along the river towards 695, looking generally the same, where it connects to the BGE maintenance path. They both collide to cross beneath 695 at that opening. The path then runs east of 695. Again, that dirt path that's out there running along the river. That is mostly along DNR property. As you can see here, this photo was taken in the summer, so it gives a little bit better of an idea of what's out there during the warmer months and just how beautiful it is. Again, it continues looking very similar as you reach Annapolis Road. And again, we wanted to imagine what a off-road facility would look like in this area using the Patapsco Riverside alignment. So we took a look and developed a rendering. So this shown here shows what a 10-foot wide path would look like along the Patapsco Riverside. Because of different environmental considerations close to the river and floodplains, wetlands, wetland buffers, we are looking into different material type options, which include boardwalk, back crushed compacted stone, and asphalt to stretch along the Patapsco Riverside. So depending on which alternative is selected, the preferred material in these areas will be determined as well based on those features. So the existing conditions from Annapolis Road up to Georgia Avenue. So in order to span from Annapolis Road up to the Southwest Area Park, we utilized Annapolis Road and then ran down Georgia Avenue. So I want to talk through those existing conditions a little bit more. Annapolis Road, as you can see here, this is the overpass of 895 running over Annapolis Road. And as you can see, Annapolis Road has really wide travel lanes out there today and a intermittent sidewalks along one or both sides from the Patapsco River up to the elementary school, which is the section we're considering. So we continued up Annapolis Road. As you can see, there are existing wide travel lanes as well. There are a lot of utility poles out there today. Existing sidewalk here you can see on both sides as you move further up. And then Georgia Avenue connects the elementary school and the Southwest Area Park running east to west. And it is a very low speed residential roadway that has some on-street parking that seems to be underutilized since all of the homes on this roadway do have driveways. And again, it's very low speed and it provides a great connection directly across from the elementary school to the Baltimore Highlands Light Rail Station and the Southwest Area Park. Lastly, we'll connect out to the BGE corridor that runs now north to south. from the BGE Pumphrey substation up to the Patapsco light rail station. And that is a very wide open corridor, as you can see, with utility poles along both sides and an existing dirt path that runs along the corridor. So we wanted to, again, imagine what the path would look like. And based on the existing conditions that are out there, we proposed a 10-foot wide shared use path to run parallel to the roadway, and it'll have a 5-foot wide grass buffer. This will cause the narrowing of the roadway lanes down to standard widths, which will help promote slower speeds along this roadway and some traffic calming additionally. So now I want to talk through the alternatives that we developed after looking into all of these existing conditions and environmental features out there. So this map here shows all 4 of the alternatives that we developed on top of each other, just for some reference as to what we were looking at. And you can see that once the alignments hit Annapolis Road, due to some of the existing constraints that are out there today and different possible ways to cross beneath 895, we have the same alignment shown for all 4 options to run up Annapolis Road, across Georgia Avenue, and then down the utility corridor due to some of those limiting constraints along Annapolis Road and possible ways to cross 895. The first is the Lansdowne alternative. This alternative really primarily utilizes that BGE utility corridor space that runs mostly along the north side of that land strip between Guinness and Annapolis Road. So you can see here, and I'll talk through it in a little bit more zoomed in detail as we are on the first third of the alternative. So this is where on the left side of the page, you'll see it connects to the previous segment, Elk Ridge to Guinness at the Guinness Brewery. So we'll start there, and then moving east, we will duck beneath the MARC train under the overpass over the bridge over the Patapsco River. And we'll turn to the north to connect up to that BGE utility corridor, and then move east to run over Herbert Run, where again, we will need that proposed bridge structure. Then we will continue down the BGE maintenance path. As we reach Halethorpe Farms Road, we'll have a small trail connection, to Halethorpe Farms Road, just to provide some additional access. And then we'll continue moving east, where we have a small proposed lookout point. Out in the field, there was really beautiful little peninsula of sorts that extended out and appeared to be utilized today. So we wanted to include that as a potential trail amenity space to relax, potential for benches and whatnot to be added to that space as well. Then continuing to the east along that BGE maintenance path, it'll connect in front of the Cocky's Enterprises or the acceptance facility at Transway Road, where we will need a proposed pedestrian crossing across Transway Road. And we'll be looking into different high visibility options to increase awareness of the truck drivers heading towards the Cocky's Enterprise and acceptance facility along that crossing. The trail then ducks down below 695 through that opening that I showed earlier at our match line. Well, we'll jump to the next sheet. This is where the trail then turns to the north and runs along the west side of that unnamed tributary that's out there today. And we will be requiring a proposed pedestrian bridge to cross that unnamed tributary and then reach out to Hammond's Ferry Road, where again, we will need a proposed pedestrian crossing. And because this is, not at an intersection, we'll be looking at different high visibility treatments such as rapid flashing beacons, pedestrian refuge islands to make that crossing location safer as we reach 30% design. And then we continue east across the utility corridor again, ducking south briefly to pass beneath 295. And then running back up to the utility corridor where we reach out to Annapolis Road. And we do try to maintain the path along the south side of the utility corridor past the National Tank and Equipment to avoid that heavy truck traffic and avoid utilizing their entrance road due to the amount of big trucks that are coming in and out of there on a daily basis. And then here is where we reach Annapolis Road and we continue to the north. And this is where the proposed typical section changes from that off-road trail to a 10-foot wide shared use path with a 5-foot wide grass buffer that runs from Annapolis Road, or runs along Annapolis Road, excuse me, from that land strip up to the elementary school, the Baltimore Highlands Elementary School. And that will continue along, avoiding utility poles where needed. So the buffer might pinch in some areas, and we will be looking to maintain all of the on-street parking that's available by the elementary school, as well as making sure that the lanes are narrowed to standard widths and moving along in that way to provide that connection to the elementary school. So after that, the pedestrian crossing proposed at the elementary school will take us across Georgia Avenue, where we are proposing a bicycle boulevard facility type to connect out to the Southwest Area Park. So we'll have the on-street pavement markings that designate the shared lane for bicyclists and vehicles, and then a 5-foot wide sidewalk along the south side of Georgia Avenue. And this will take us out to connect to the Baltimore Highlands Light Rail Station, down Clunk Drive to connect to the Southwest Area Park main entrance, and then running north along the BGE utility corridor with connections to the light rail stations and the different existing parking lots that are out there today, as we move north to connect to the Patapsco light rail station as well within that BGE utility corridor. We're trying to be able to utilize some of those existing parking lots, which are currently underutilized, and try to promote use of the park as well through this project. Next, we have the Patapsco River alternative, which utilizes mostly the Patapsco Riverside portion of that land strip between Guinness and Annapolis Road. So you'll see it runs along the Patapsco River for the majority of the alignment. Then a little bit more zoomed in detail. Again, it'll connect to the previous segment at the Guinness Brewery on the left side of the page here, and then duck below the MARC train heading east, where we'll follow along the Patapsco Riverside area and reach Herbert Run. And again, we will need that proposed pedestrian bridge structure to connect up to the BGE maintenance path again and provide that Halethorpe Farms Road connection. And then the trail will continue, the main alignment will continue along the Patapsco Riverside area trail that's out there today, along the Patapsco River, reaching out where it will need to cross 2 unnamed tributaries of the Patapsco River. Again, they're relatively smaller, so there will be smaller pedestrian structures that will be needed for the south alignment. It'll reach below the acceptance facility, dig behind through the woods there, and then connect out to the underneath the 695 opening as well. It will cross the unnamed tributary I mentioned earlier, using another proposed pedestrian bridge structure, and then reach Hammond's Ferry Road, where again we will need the proposed pedestrian crossing and be looking into different higher visibility options and treatments to make that safer for trail users. Then we run along the Patapsco Riverside area trail, again along the south side of that land strip, dip below 295, and then run out to Annapolis Road using that existing path area along and avoiding wetlands as much as possible. This is where we connect to Annapolis Road, and where the typical section then switches from the off-road facility type to the shared use path facility type with that 5-foot wide grass buffer. As I mentioned earlier, all 4 alternatives do have the same third sheet for the alternatives. So shown here, we will again be using that shared use path all the way up from the match line shown on the bottom up to the elementary school. We'll have the narrowing of the roadways, avoiding taking any parking or changing any of the existing left and right turn lanes along Annapolis Road at the intersections. And then we'll run out along Georgia Avenue using the bicycle boulevard facility type, and then up the BGE utility corridor using an off-road trail typical section. Next, we have the Halethorpe alternative, and you'll see that this is a combination of the first 2 alternatives that I talked through. So you'll see in between the Guinness Brewery and 695, we're using the portion of Lansdowne alternative, where we switch then to the east of 695 to use the Patapsco River alternative to run out to Annapolis Road along the south side. So in some more detail, again, this will look familiar because we're using the north alignment as well. So we'll connect to the Guinness Brewery. We'll duck below the MARC train and then use the BGE maintenance path to run along and cross Herbert Road with the proposed structure, connect to Halethorpe Farms Road using a trail spur, run along the maintenance path to the east with that proposed lookout point, and then reaching up to Transway Road at the acceptance facility. And then we will run along to the path to connect beneath 695 at the match line. And at this point, this is where this alternative changes to then utilize the south side of the land strip area. So again, we'll cross that unnamed tributary of the Patapsco River using a proposed bridge structure. And then we will reach out to Hammond's Ferry Road and have that proposed pedestrian crossing. As we move along the south side of the land strip heading to the east, we'll pass below 295 and then reach out to Annapolis Road again, where we transition to that shared use path typical section. And again, the third sheet here is going to look very familiar as we run along Annapolis Road using a shared use path, bicycle boulevard along Georgia Avenue, and along the BG utility corridor with an off-road trail typical section. Lastly, we have the Baltimore Highlands alternative, which is again a combination of the first two that we talked about. But in this one, between Guinness and 695, we use the south side of the land strip. And then from 695 to Annapolis Road, we use the north side of the land strip. So on the first sheet here, again, connecting to the Guinness Brewery, running along the Patapsco River, which will require a pedestrian bridge to cross Herbert Run again. We'll have that trail spur that connects to Halethorpe Farms Road. And then we will run along the Patapsco River using that DNR property existing alignment that's out there today. And we will need two different smaller pedestrian structures to cross two small unnamed tributaries along this alignment as well. And then duck below the acceptance facility, Cocky's Enterprise, and then connect out to 695 at the match line. And this is where it transitions to run up to the north side of the land strip to reach the BGE utility corridor. So to run along the west side of the unnamed tributary and then cross at the corridor location using a proposed pedestrian bridge and require a pedestrian crossing at Hammond's Ferry Road, again, looking into different high visibility options to increase safety. Running to the east using the BG utility corridor, again, ducking below 295 and then heading north again to reach the corridor where it will maintain the south side of that corridor to avoid heavy truck traffic at the National Tank and Equipment, where it connects out to Annapolis Road after that. Then again, we'll transition to a shared use path up Annapolis Road, bicycle boulevard along Georgia Avenue, and an off-road trail typical section along the BGE corridor running north to south. So what are the next steps for the project? So currently we are in the public comment period, which is running from March 1st to March 30th, with the public meeting being on March 14th, right in the middle. We wanted to open up the public comment period prior to the public meeting, and we do have a project page and story map available online, and where you can submit comments through the survey or on the story map itself during that comment period. And then that will end on March 30th, where we will then take all of the input that we heard and received to select the preferred alternative in April. And then once we have the preferred alternative in between April and September, we will begin the design of the preferred alternative, where we will then open up to another public comment period and public meeting number 2 around September to October. And with that, that ends our presentation. So if there are any questions outside of this meeting, you can also reach out to PRG SW Area Park at publicinput.com for any additional questions you might have.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us today. Just as a reminder, the comment period is currently underway and ends Thursday, March 30th. So we'd love to hear from you. You can also learn more about the project on the project page which is at publicinput.com/PRG. And through that, you can access the story map and the survey to provide your feedback. So once again, thank you for joining us.